Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you are a returning subscriber, welcome. I hope you're having an amazing day. See what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts. You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. So hit that subscribe button. I am here with the one and only Kim Urbanchuk. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Did I pronounce your last name right?
Urbanchuk. Yes.
Urbanchuk. All right. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable there, but
Happens.
appreciate your graciousness. So how was your weekend? How you doing this morning?
It was good. It was good. Yeah. Very low key, very relaxing. I'm good this morning. It's Monday. First thing Monday. So
Yeah.
ready.
Let's jump into a podcast.
Yes.
So where are you at? Where do you live?
I'm in Fairfax County, Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C.
Very nice. Hotbed in many ways.
Yeah.
So I was really excited to get you on. You're part of our series on the most ethical companies, where we can spotlight folks who are part of those teams who are doing some really interesting things. We have this framework that we're using when we're talking about ethics and compliance and HR to some degree. That, when these roles first came out, it was kind of compliance 1.0, don't get the boss in trouble, keep the company out of jail, right? Then we kind of transitioned to let's get some tools, and now that we're a real organization, a real department, let's get some tools and let's get some efficiencies in the mix. And that's where a lot of us kind of find ourselves now, kind of swimming in these data lakes. But what we're seeing is that over this new decade, more and more organizations, I think, are going to ascend to this compliance 3.0, which is really about effectiveness and is really about unleashing the magic in the workforce. So you are part of a team and someone just as a thought leader who seems to kind of exhibit a lot of these qualities that we're trying to help folks ascend toward. So excited to get you on to pick your brain, see kind of how you're wired and how you kind of came to be in the seat that you're in. So maybe we'll start there. How did you kind of get into this game? What kind of propelled you into this field?
By accident. That's everyone's answer.
Everyone's
right?
answer. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was in law school, there wasn't really an ethics and compliance focus or track, if you will. So all of the ethics classes we took were professional ethics, legal ethics, and then all the compliance work was kind of in other courses like international law or commercial paper, all these kinds of different here and there. So when I left law school, I was a prosecutor for a few years, and then I went to work for a United States Department of Transportation in their general law department. And when I came in, they said, "Oh, by the way, we need someone to do ethics," because the ethics attorney at the time needed another set of hands, set of eyes. And I said, "Sure, I'll do whatever you need me to do." So that was my introduction to the ethics world. And so from there, it just kind of exploded. I got good at it, I suppose, and ended up, while at DOT, there was a Airports Authority board that had been having some trouble with some board members. There had been some allegations of improper spending and gifts and all of those kinds of things. So the secretary at the time, and I was a career, I was not a political appointee, the secretary at the time, which was Secretary LaHood, appointed me to be the what they called the Federal Accountability Officer for the airport.
Wow, it's sounds very official. Did you get a badge?
I did not, but I did get a nice little office at Reagan Airport, and I helped them with rewriting their ethics manual and their procurement manual, because there was a lot of scrutiny on them at the time. From there, I kind of got poached by the Assistant Secretary for Budget at the time. He went over to Capitol Hill to be the staff director on T&I Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in the House, needed someone to do oversight and investigations, asked me to come over. So I did that. And then after a few years in Congress, where I was like, oh, maybe Congress isn't the right place for me, I don't know. I'm not the most political animal in the world. Left government service finally and went to Airbus, where I ran their ethics program for North America.
Okay.
And then after several years there, landed at Parsons, which is where I am now, as their Chief Ethics and Compliance Counsel, which is a very happy role for me to be in. It's a great company. They have a great program. So I got very lucky when I came in the door.
Sounds like a pretty interesting kind of path to Parsons.
Yeah.
So let's go back to when you were in that office at Reagan Airport and you're tasked
Yeah.
with helping them redo their entire sort of ethics manual and those procedures. What was that like? What was that sort of process broadly like? And what was that like on your first day? Because it doesn't, I mean, you weren't sort of trained in doing this, right? Like it was like, here, kind of go figure this out.
I had been doing ethics at DOT for, I think, probably 2 or 3 years at that point, maybe. So I had, pretty solid experience in U.S. government ethics. So
And that's like 7 years of ethics experience in human years.
What's that? Yes. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I had, and when I came into the department, it was actually a really cool time to pick up ethics, if you will, because it was President Bush. I came in October 2008. So it was right before the 2008 election. So President Bush, I was involved in outboarding sort of all of his political appointees and then inboarding all of the Obama administration's appointees. So I was doing financial disclosure work, all of that kind of vetting work. So it kind of set me up for, continued responsibility, like increasing responsibility in those areas. I did ethics training. We had a good team of folks in law at that point that were all kind of involved with ethics training and guidance. And our boss at the time was really focused on sort of heightening that program. So it was a great time to join that. My first day I was nervous. I was like 28 years old, I think, something like that. And I remember sitting in front of the board at one of their meetings and they were like, who is this? Who do you work for? Like, who is and I was like, I work for the secretary and I'm here to help, but they were great. Management at the time was on board. They, were very receptive and they ended up appointing an ethics officer internally, which they hadn't had before. So it was a great experience. It was, a great learning experience and kind of got my feet wet, outside of the government, although it's a quasi kind of governmental body. It's their structure is an interstate compact between DC, Maryland, Virginia, and the federal government. So it was an interesting kind of quasi governmental exposure for me, but they were great. And as far as I know, they're doing really well and haven't had any issues lately.
Well, good. That's good. That's good that you were part of it. How, you said that everybody was very, very receptive to it. Mm-hmm. Have you had experiences where you were trying to push change and you didn't get that same receptiveness? And like, how did that set you up for the other challenge?
Sure. So, I mean, you'll always have that in these roles. I mean, I think people have a perception that you kind of exist sometimes to slow them down,
right,
or mess up a deal or stand in their way. And I've always approached it more as like, I want to be your partner. I don't want to be your police. I want, this is your goal. Your goal is to sell this to X party or to, meet this, whatever they're trying
this KPI or whatever, right?
This KPI. How I'm trying to help you get there compliantly and without, cutting corners or violating policy or the law, because on the, the bribery kind of ethics side, it might be a little more obvious, but you get into some of the trade regulations and people don't know what they don't know. And so it's our job to give them the tools to meet their business objectives in a compliant manner so that it, so they can make their sale and they can be happy, but also the business can keep going forward and, meeting our objectives in accordance with all of our responsibilities under the law. I mean, so partner, not police is kind of my approach. So, I've had a lot of good luck with folks that might not, when they first meet me, they're like, oh, compliance, but I don't know. I just kind of talk them through my approach and it seems to work pretty well so far.
So I love that approach. That's obviously like a compliance 3.0 approach. I'm partnering with you. I'm not here to slap your hand or handcuff you, but to really, again, help you run as fast as you can within the confines of the business, or without stepping over a line that's going to put undue risk on the organization or whatever. Do you like, why are you successful at that, and why are so many other people unsuccessful at it? And obviously people are unsuccessful at it because there's this like broad branding problem across the sort of economy with respect to ethics and compliance in general. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I honestly think it's approach, really. I mean, you can come into a place with the best intentions. I am not a kind of slash and burn kind of person. So I know a lot of folks that come into a new organization or start a new role, and they want to just blow it up, and everything is, this isn't the way I would do it. I'm just gonna,
everyone's an idiot but me.
Yeah, right. I don't find that works very well when you come into a place and you're like, hi, you're all a bunch of idiots.
Right.
It doesn't really, it's not really, I think, in that How to Win Friends and Influence People book.
Yeah, that chapter got deleted.
Right. I really try to get to know them and know what their objectives are, and then explain why. That's one thing I think there's always a disconnect. Like, instead of just throwing down a policy and saying, it's the FCPA, we're doing this, I explain to them why we need the information we need, why it's important to get the ownership information of a company we're working with, or pick your piece of information I'm asking for. And then I give them reasonable turnaround times. My team does not sit on things for months. It's unless we kind of give like a 5 business days or less turnaround time, unless something is particularly sticky. And then we always keep communication with the business, like, look, this has come up, this is going to take a little more time because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
It's really just about, I really think it's about approach and communication, and keeping that open and understanding the business and what their goals are and why they need to do it the way they want to do it, or why they want to do it the way they want to do it, and working with them. Okay, well, how do we get there? How do we get you where you need to be if we can't do this one thing, right?
Yeah. So there's a deep, deep understanding, though. It's sort of a multifaceted understanding is what you sort of just described here. This is not like, well, I'm in this position of power because the law says so. This is something that's etched in stone and you must comply because, otherwise you're fired or something. It's understanding the other person from the Win Friends and Influence People perspective, or just the straight empathy, or just sort of your basic, persuasion 101, connecting with someone and understanding what their needs are. But you also touched on something else, which I think kind of gets paid short shrift in this game, and that is understanding the business. And I'm not saying that the average ethics and compliance person doesn't understand the business. What I'm saying is that there are nuances to every business. There are nuances to every market that you're in, geographical, just sort of theoretical, whatever, that are as equally important to understand, digest, and like conceptualize in the context of whatever you're communicating and whatever you're trying to persuade the workforce to adhere to, whether that's a new policy, to your point, or a new way of doing things, or a new sort of control that needs to be implemented on their day-to-day. That, and you used to be a prosecutor, you said?
I was.
So it's, what's interesting? This is this little theory that I'm kind of coming up with, that many people come into ethics and compliance in different ways, right? Some people are just straight, in-house lawyers, and then they go and they, find some sort of circuitous route to the ENCC. What I have found is that a lot of folks who are lawyers, but they are of the litigation ilk, or the prosecution ilk. In that vein, there's a certain argumentation that you guys are well trained at, and in bringing that argumentation, it just becomes sort of part of your DNA. And it's how you kind of approach a lot of things. So you may have 30 different arguments that could or could not sort of sway someone's decision. You have to take that sort of risk-based approach in building that argument in the context of whatever case you're arguing or whatever. And that just kind of becomes a rhythm for you in a way that you kind of look at the world that lends itself so well in these other situations where, again, like if you're making an argument, you have to persuade somebody. You have to persuade a jury. You have to persuade a judge or whatever to give you the the ruling that you want. That's not like, well, hey, please do this. And they say, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. You have to convince them. And so in that, it just kind of seems to wire you guys a little bit differently to make you a little bit more effective. I guess what I'm getting at is a lot of the most effective E&C folks that I look up to are people that came from this kind of a route, and it seems to be sort of a consistent undercurrent in the way that they just kind of go through the world.
I think what it also trains you to do, to be honest, is anticipating the arguments that you're going to get against what you're trying to accomplish, right? So, when you're in court, you kind of learn to anticipate the defense's arguments. Up, I need to have a counter. So you're kind of more prepared for the pushback. The pushback doesn't bother me. Like I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, that's a big piece.
In this role is I don't take it personally. Like I don't assume that everyone that doesn't like my new policy is like anti-compliance and wants to do things nefariously. I don't think that at all. I know that they're in sales. They're trying to close this deal, and they maybe don't understand the ITAR or pick your poison.
Right.
And so it's kind of incumbent upon me to get them on board with why we need to do things a certain way. And I listen to them, and I kind of have an answer back for it's going to take too long. It's going to, my business partner doesn't want to provide its ownership information, and how can, they're saying they're offended by you asking, and those kinds of things.
Right.
I anticipate those sort of questions and concerns, and then we have a good answer back to them about why we need that information. So, it's a partnership. We have to understand them if we expect them to understand where we're coming from. You can't just say, well, I don't care what the business wants. It's this way, my way or the highway. I feel like that doesn't really work that well.
Yeah, it doesn't work that well. It rubs people the wrong way. But you said something pretty interesting in there, like you don't take it personally. And again, I'm painting in a broad brush stroke. That's the only those are the only brushes I have, wide ones, broad brushes. But so many we have this this branding problem in E&C for a reason. It's come from something, like, you know what I'm saying? Everybody didn't just sort of like stereotypically come up with it. They've had a bunch of experiences where they've encountered sort of the antithesis of what you described. It's the police. It's not the partnership. It's the do what I tell you to do. I mean, I just get this picture of like someone, E&C is like a translator, and we're translating Russian to English speakers. And like sometimes when the English speaker doesn't understand it, we just start yelling at them in Russian more. Like it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So do you think it's just a way that you're wired? Do you think it's a part of your background? Do you think it's a part of your upbringing that kind of puts you in this position to be, to exhibit this kind of effectiveness just sort of naturally? And what do you think we can tell folks who are struggling with that, whether it's, they've inherited they've inherited a stereotype that they weren't a part of, like they stepped into an organization that has a bad reputation or something?
Sure. So I guess your first question, just kind of always how I've been wired. Parents, I don't know, they've been, you catch more flies with honey kind of people.
Yep.
I just never, and it's an approach that doesn't work with me either. Like if I have a colleague that's, bound and determined that this is the way, they're right. If they're kind of rolling over everyone, it just isn't something I really want to work with. It's not an approach that I that resonates.
You don't feel good. You don't feel good steamrolling people. Yeah.
Right. And like if you're a bully about X, even if you're right about that regulation, it doesn't make people want to reach out and work with you. Right. So, the way I look at it is our job is to kind of mitigate risk to the business in certain areas, to apprise the business of those risks, to keep them educated about those risks, and to help them shape their business practices to avoid some of those risks, mitigate those risks, and also stay in compliance with what the DOJ expects from us, the SEC expects from us. And when you kind of approach it that way, people are more willing to listen. And it's I think if you inherit kind of a bad situation, the most important thing you can do, and I inherited a good situation, so I'm very lucky in my current role.
Yeah.
Um, I have, stepped into places where it's like, oh, it's kind of a mess.
Yeah.
Is the first thing I think you should do is just listen to what happened before you get there. Don't come in first day and decide to burn it all down, and you've got people staring at you like you don't even know how we work.
Right.
So I think the first thing you do is listen, talk to people, build those relationships, and then start proposing changes that are incremental and that make sense over time. I just slash and burn is just not I just don't think it works. I really don't. I mean, unless you're in a really, emergency situation where you're walking into something that, like, if you don't shut it down, there's going to be, a legal problem.
Totally.
I think you're more well served by listening to the folks around you, hearing their concerns, hearing what works for them, what they need, what their goals are, and then, putting changes in place accordingly.
And that approach, I think, not only is it like more effective, I mean, to your point, if there's a fire, you got to put the fire out, but usually there's not a fire unless we're kind of creating one. This is, again, in general. And coming in with that sort of people first approach, or that empathy approach, or that listening first approach, again, affords you so much more time to go slow to go fast. It helps you build some credibility with folks and start to perhaps even establish some authentic relationships where you're going to maybe get some insights that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, while you can kind of build your own sort of personal relationship with them, so that when it comes time for you to ask them to do something, they like you already, or they trust you already, or they at least don't think like, what is this person walking around with a hammer swinging it for? They don't even understand that this is a china shop, or they don't even understand the nuance of the business. And it lets you earn that trust, like I said, but also understand that, like, that business nuance that you brought up before, which is as equally important in this whole mix. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think getting to know your colleagues in different functional areas too is incredibly important if you're going to try to push any policy or procedure changes. I mean, you look at something like FCPA due diligence, right? That's going to involve
right.
not the ethics and compliance department. If it's a well-rounded procedure, it's going to involve sales, tax, procurement. You got to kind of get everyone on the same page. So, hey, I'm making these changes, I'm proposing these changes. This will impact you guys in the following ways. What do you think? Will it link up with your current policies and procedures, or am I going to like just tip the apple cart wide, over and not even ask you about how that's going to affect your day to day? So you have to work with people in order for this to work in my opinion, in a quick and seamless fashion, right? We put out some new procedure updates on our FCPA due diligence last year, and I worked with procurement and contracts and the business ahead of time to see what their needs were. What's the choke point? How can we loosen that up? What are we looking at? Are we doing a risk-based analysis? Are we kind of like over heavy-handed and looking at everyone the same with the same scrutiny across the board? And so we leveled it and made some of the stuff more automated. And when it rolled out, I got very little pushback because I worked with people in the creation of it, right? So they knew it was coming. They weren't surprised. And,
they had a say in it.
Right. They had our commitment for, quicker turnarounds than maybe they were used to. And so it was a good result.
So let's dive into that just on a super tactical basis. Again, because I think like a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. I want to be like her. How do I do it? You know what I'm saying? But they're still down in the pit. They need a way out of it. So let's kind of put a little rope ladder down for them. Like in the context of that project, when did you start reaching out to these other people? Did you start to kind of map out and say like, okay, here are all the departments that are going to be affected by this. I need to have 3 meetings with them. Like, again, I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but like, let's kind of let's get like an actual framework for somebody who needs to do something like this, a new policy that's going to affect a bunch of different departments or something.
So early on, I came in and I took a look at our policies and procedures, and I listened to kind of what the board expectations were. And then I benchmarked the procedure against sort of what DOJ expects in their guidance on FCPA compliance programs. I do that routinely, right? And then I started reaching out to, all of those folks that, first of all, the folks that work for me, right? To get a sense of their bandwidth and all that kind of stuff. But then reached out to procurement, business, contracts, and started talking about how does this work for you now? What would you like to see? I didn't have like a set number of meetings. I met with them and I would take their feedback back and start tinkering with the procedures.
And if I can add one thing like that I noticed when you gave me those examples of the types of questions that you're asking, like those are true open-ended questions, listening-based questions. How does your world look type of questions so that you could then take that down, digest it, and assess and say, okay, this is our best path through this. And
then every time I would have like a draft or make changes to the procedure, I would send it out to that group of folks, get feedback, schedule a meeting. Okay, how does this look? What do you think about this? Or we do
smart.
A couple times where we backed off of some points because we were duplicating work, right? Shop is screening everybody that comes through. We don't need to do that twice, right? So we kind of backed off certain places, a little more scrutiny in other places, so it was really a collaborative effort to where by the time it kind of made it through several rounds and we were all happy with it, it just went out and we did training on it and everyone was good. I mean, so it wasn't necessarily a, I'm going to have 3 meetings. Deadline. It was the kind of thing where I committed to the board to update the policies and procedures in this year. And then, we did it by the summer, but I had sort of a long lead time where if it took longer than that, that was fine. And we just kind of kept working on it until we were happy with it. And also with the knowledge that, hey guys, if something changes, we get better tools or we have needs, we'll revisit it and we'll tweak it. They're kind of like
living. Yeah, you're
living. Living documents. So I hate that, but yeah.
You hate it. Well, I get it though. I get why you hate it, and I also get why it's kind of important to keep it. I mean, it just prevents people from feeling like something's being imposed on them. So many times.
I had a conversation this morning with a colleague where I was like, why are we, has anyone talked to this function about their requirement before we like go in and start talking about why we're so worried about it?
Totally.
Well, no. Well,
let's start there.
Before you shut it down, right? Like there's probably an easier, so I've never understood that where it's like, this is the way. And so we're going to shoot down all these ideas that are coming out of the business without talking to them about it. That to me, that approach doesn't make any sense to me.
So let's dive into that approach because that's the sort of root of this broad issue that I think we're trying to kind of change over this next 10 years, right? What is that? Is it laziness? Is it too introverted? I don't want to talk to other people. Is it they don't know what's good for them? Is it a power thing? What do you think it is?
I think it's a lot of things depending on the person, right? I think sometimes it's a power thing, and I think that's the worst.
Yeah.
I don't think that's helpful to the business, to their goals. I mean, it's, if you're in-house, it's your business too, right?
Totally.
Business to succeed. So just, shooting down all of their ideas. I think some of it is fear of what I call unavoidable business risk. I mean, if you're selling stuff, widgets all over the world, there is a risk you run of things. There's different regulatory schemes all over the place. You're going to have a bad apple or two somewhere, maybe someday. You don't know. There's things you can't control. So I think a lot of compliance officers want to control all the things as opposed to they want to lock it down so there's no risk ever that comes through. And I think that that's not realistic. I mean, doing business on a global scale has inherent risks in it. There's geopolitical changes. There's, you can't see everything. You're not, we have 16,000 employees. I'm not following each one of them every day. Like,
what are you doing? Yeah.
So you got to just, I think your job is really to give people the right tools and then trust your people, and make sure you have good controls. But I think maybe it comes from a control thing or a fear of risk thing.
Right.
Also, I think some folks are afraid, okay, if it happens on my watch, that's my career, right? And so I think there's some fear in there, but
But you seem like somebody who's comfortable kind of with that sphere of, or the placement of that sphere of what you can actually control and what's outside of your control. Some people think that sphere is as big as the whole world. You know, some people take no responsibility and that sphere doesn't sort of extend beyond their body or something. Like, it's somewhere in the middle.
Right.
But that disconnect can lead to a ton of fear, a ton of, like, you know, bad risk taking, in that you won't take any risks, to your point.
Right. Or you just won't answer. Right. I mean, I've seen people where they just sit on something so long the business gives up, and that's not helpful either.
Right.
I mean, so, you know, in particularly risky situations, I think it behooves you to outline the risks, document the risks, talk about what exposure there is for the business. But at the end of the day, you can't control everything. And it does, of course, things keep me, you know, every compliance officer is like, what keeps you up at night? Like, there are things, of course there are things, but you can't internalize it all and try to control every transaction everywhere, big or small, all the time. It just, you know,
losing preposition.
Batty.
Exactly.
Right.
So you kicked everybody into shape at Reagan International. I'm kidding, of course.
They did need kicking.
They did need kicking. They needed just a little guidance, a little hug. You hugged them into shape. Okay.
Yes.
And then you went to Capitol Hill.
Yes.
So tell me about that, because you said you found out that you weren't a politician. So tell me about what that was like. And I just imagine in that there was some thought that, like, well, I get that this is political here, but it's probably not going to seep into this thing.
Well, what was interesting is it wasn't, my boss was great. And he actually believed in like normal oversight. He did not expect me to do like political bomb lobbying. That was not his style. He didn't do any gotcha stuff. He was not that way.
Okay.
So it wasn't the committee I was working on, really. It was more just kind of an overall like, oh, this place might not be for me. I learned a ton. But I think I kind of came on the Hill a little too late. Like, a lot of people on the Hill have been there since they were, you know, right out of college. I was like 30 already. And so it was I wasn't baked in that way the way some folks were. And we did some really good oversight work, Hurricane Sandy recovery oversight, but it wasn't, it wasn't what, you know, there wasn't the kind of the stuff you see on CNN was not the kind of stuff that I was doing. I learned a ton, but I also think I'm better advising on, you know, businesses and agencies how to do things, and maybe the Hill was just wasn't a great fit for me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I have a lot of great friends over there, but
did you feel like you were just like walking in the mud a little bit there? Not that it was mudslinging, but that like you couldn't move as fast as you wanted?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we were doing good oversight work, but it was kind of not the work that really, it wasn't really my passion, right?
Yeah,
wasn't kind of my niche and what I was really, really interested in. So it was great. And I liked my boss a lot. Like I said, nothing bad to say about him or staff or anything like that. It was just kind of, I wasn't quite, you know, I wasn't quite up on the nuances either of, you know, who was who and who was in with who. Like
that whole game, right?
I was a career, you know, civil servant. I wasn't a political appointee. So I kind of walked in like, what?
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm just not.
You're not that way.
Political animal. I'm just not. So it was like, I didn't want to go to receptions. And when I was done work, I wanted to go home and like.
You're like, this is, and then, you know, the other people who are wired the other way, they're like, this is the work. That day job is just for this work. The night work.
And I'm like, I don't need free tacos. Like I want to go to the gym and go home. Like I had a fiance at the time who's now my husband. I was like, I'm just gonna go watch TV and go to bed. Like I'm
live a normal life.
Right. It was it's just a different kind of environment.
So do you feel like any of that experience or that time you spent there set you up well for your transition into Airbus?
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, the good part about being there was I got a crash course in like 3 years of the political landscape in DC that I didn't necessarily have when I was a career civil servant.
Right.
In terms of like, oh, okay, these are the people that are plugged in. These are the this is the way the game is played, right? The way it is made. And so I was able to advise, I advise on hack and lobbying.
Got it.
And also advise both Airbus and Parsons on, okay, you're having this event. Well,
tacos. Bring tacos.
Yeah, great. Bring tacos. I'm able to kind of off the top of my head be like, you can't check with house ethics. I don't think you can be it definitely set me up in terms of thinking about that and knowing the landscape in DC and kind of the lobbying world, so to speak. So I think that's helped a lot too. Yeah.
So you transitioned into Airbus. How long were you there at Airbus, and what do you kind of what kind of environment did you step into in terms of like, maybe contrast it to Parsons, which you just said is like a really great environment you stepped into. How did it kind of relate to that, and how were you able to like leave your thumbprint on that world?
So Airbus, when I joined, had already disclosed that they were under investigation to, they had some FCPA. Mm-hmm. They had a settlement with DOJ, I think earlier last year is when that came out. So that was already well underway. The internal investigations were well underway, and they needed someone to stand up a program in the US and Canada, where they had a hotline, but no one really used it. Mm-hmm. Training, but not regularly. So they just needed someone to kind of shore that up. The people I worked with there were great. I loved my management. I loved my colleagues and my team. They were fantastic. It's hard living through that.
Totally.
Enforcement environment when it's an active investment. It was very busy. It was very stressful. And it was kind of uncertain for a while. So that was, I'm glad that I did it, because I think now I know kind of what it's like to work in a place that's under that kind of scrutiny. Yeah. Really no room for error at that point, right? I mean, that's a pendulum swings all the way back to like, that's when, compliance is controlling all the things, right? Because and that's the fire, right? Parsons, when I came to Parsons, much different, because they weren't dealing with that. The ethics program at Parsons is, award-winning for years, and is kind of this well-baked part of the backbone of the place, kind of well-oiled. Mm-hmm. So in certain ways, it was a lot easier. I was like, hey,
this is what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
And it's as with any program, it's always busy, but it really is a well-oiled machine. We've got some fantastic, I think, best practices that I've literally never seen before that I inherited. We have a corporate ethics committee. That's myself as the chair, and our vice president of ethics and compliance, our EVP of operations, and our EVP of one of our markets. And every single ethics case that we have that's investigated by our ethics officers comes up through the committee for final disposition.
Really?
Yeah.
So how many cases is that? Is that 100 cases a year?
Well,
just broad, big picture.
We bucket things by, it's all on our website, actually. You can go look at our care website, and we keep running stats on there. We measure it in interaction. So everything, cases and questions, we measure.
Okay, cool.
So we call them engagements, and we had 377 engagements.
Wow. So one a day almost. Yeah. Counting weekends.
But the bulk of those are questions. They're substantive. We don't log the ones where it's like, what's the website again?
Yeah. Why did someone eat my cottage cheese out of the fridge?
Right. But if it's I'd like to take this second job, we adjudicate those.
Good. Okay.
And so we keep track of everything in our case management system, and we have trained investigators embedded throughout the business, and it's a great system. I walk like, are you kidding? This is great.
I don't have to arm wrestle anybody into doing this. And what's nice about that?
Volunteering. I had 3 new volunteers this year. They're like, hey, I'd like to be an ethics officer. I was like,
what'd you say? Say that
really?
Again. Say that again. Write it down. I don't believe you.
Great. I'm like, come more. Yeah, more the merrier.
But I mean, the case management system's great because it can hold all this information, but it's only really great if you can do something with it. And it sounds like this committee that you have it's not a myopic committee. It seems like a multifaceted committee with people from different areas. And, you know, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you can always tell what's important to somebody by how they spend their time. And you can tell what's important to an organization by how that collection of people, how that entity spends its time. And if there is time across the business spent for ethics, things like this, and, you know, I love that. I love how you pictured it, or how you described it as sort of part of the backbone of the company. I mean, a good ethics department is the lifeblood of a company. It's the circulatory system. It's delivering, it's answering questions. It's moving with the business, right? Everybody has this gig economy thing. Okay, how are we going to do this? How can we change our policies in a, you know, common sense way to account for somebody who wants to do wedding pictures on the weekends or whatever the thing is. I just love that, you know, you guys are so public about it. You're so transparent about it, and you've made this an actual like thing in your business to do something with these concerns from the workforce.
Yeah, and I think we're very transparent about it. So we put the stats up on our website, but we also communicate at the end of every year to the employee base about, look, this is what we saw come in last year. These are the trends. This is what people are asking about. We, you know, tag our training and we have a monthly communications plan to, you know, if we have a spike in conflicts of interest, why is that happening?
Right.
Try to the why. You know, root cause analysis and all that, you know, fancy buzzword, but really we're just trying to get to the why. Like, why are we seeing it?
Right.
And I think it's really important, and it wouldn't happen if we didn't have the kind of executive and board support that we do. It's astounding here. I mean, it really is. A lot of people talk, you know, they say that.
Well, no one's going to say that I don't care about my employees.
Right.
And no one's even going to sort of allow themselves to think it, even if, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the actions here, you know, it's the kind of thing where when I go to the board, we do a case appendix. And when I got here, I was like, it's a encyclopedic listing of every single thing that comes through the program with, you know, what it was and the result. And at first I was like, do you really want to see this? Does the board really care about, you know, someone's eating my lunch out of the, you must find a thief. I got to my first board meeting and they're asking me questions about things like, you know, questions that were asked, you know, 2 months ago. And I'm going,
yeah,
you know, so they're very committed, which makes my job a lot easier in a lot of ways and sometimes a lot harder.
Right. They're actually going to ask, was it mustard or was it somebody's actual yogurt? Yeah.
Study before the board. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a great place. I'm very content.
So, you know, it's hard for an ethics or compliance or HR person to turn that light bulb on at the top. I mean, you know, I'd love to talk some more about, we don't have to talk about specifics, but just sort of in general, you know, you're in this program now that, you know, gets all these awards. You guys are super transparent. The board actually seems to care about these concerns. They want to see the full detail of it. So you have that on one hand. You were able to step into this thing where it's a flywheel and it's a conversation and you're communicating back to the workforce and stuff. And you came from something where it seemed like it was largely check the box. There was a hotline, nobody called it. There was training, but it wasn't, you know, it didn't seem like it was very effective before you got there and stood up the proper program for, you know, North America. Not throwing stones. I'm just saying they seem like night and day. And I'm wondering, like, what kind of resistance did you see over on the other side? What, like, lack of, like, buy-in or, like, pull from the top, like, helped contribute to that, like, lack of I'm just picturing, like, this flywheel or, like, this circulatory system that you have now, and how much of that is the heart of the company being the board just pushing these nutrients throughout the body. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, so at Airbus, I'm not sure that it wasn't, I didn't get any resistance from like management. I think what the issue was there was, so, you know, the conduct was over in Europe, and I think they did some, you know, changing of management, and management was very supportive, and they were the first ones to kind of be like, we need to fix this. I wasn't around for when the stuff happened, right? Know really what the culture was like that before. I think that it was certainly some of the controls we were putting in place were new for people. So they were like, where's it coming from, right? And why is it? I think the only resistance really that we got was they kind of, how do I say this? I don't want to say overcorrected because that's not right, but the pendulum swung to a very, very controlled
Totally.
environment,
Which is a natural thing to happen.
It's just a natural thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the right, I think, where, you know, especially with sales agents, it was, I mean, you had to
Right.
justify. I mean, there was lots of hoops to jump through, and I think the only resistance was really like, you know, this didn't happen here. Why are they making us do this? And it was kind of like trying to get everyone on board with, look, we're a huge company, but we're one company, and
Right.
we need to be in this together. It was more of that kind of culture shift. I think in general, because I really think they get it, and they've made a lot of fixes and improvements, and I know they're taking it very seriously right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think in general, some people, and I'm not saying Airbus part wherever, you know, but just kind of out there in the ethics and compliance industry, if you will, a lot of the stuff we hear that all of us have horror stories, battle scars, whatever about are, you know, why is this important? Like, so what?
Right.
You know, and I think for me, what's really helpful with those people, which you're not all, like, it's kind of like one, the other, there's always one that's like, why?
Right.
And those types of folks, I think you got to hit them where the money is, right? And say, all right, listen, that's why I do like a scared straight here. Do like the top 10 FCPA enforcement actions, right? It's like this, see this fine? That's bigger than our market cap. Just
right. We can't afford this fine.
Right?
Yeah.
Can't afford it. And also just how disruptive it is to the business. You have auditors running around all the time. You've got counsel, you know, going through your computer. You've got
right. All that noise, it just gums up the works.
Gums up the works, slows everything down. And then even if it's not a big fine, you still got, it all hits the bottom line. You know, ITAR violations are up to what, 1.5 million per violation. I mean, these are things that they, you know, if you stop paying attention, they can add up very quickly. So, you know, making the business case is also important, where it's like, you know, not only is it the right thing to do, but this is how it's going to impact the numbers.
Right.
You know, if you get in a situation where you have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to the government, it's going to tank your stock price. You know, you're not going to get your bonus. And like, and also they could, you know, turn off our export privileges, get suspended,
Totally.
get debarred. A company like ours, that would be completely destructive.
Totally.
Crippling. So it's about socializing those potential outcomes and making people understand that you're not just doing that because you're like, oh boy, this is the right thing to do. Like, it's also good business. You know, people want to work with people they trust.
Right.
So they need to be able to trust that we have these controls in
place. Yeah. And again, you know, you can, sometimes it's just reading that list and everyone's light bulbs are going to go on and they're going to say, okay, well, I guess this is super important. Other folks, to your point, you have to do that scared straight thing, or, you know, you said hit them in the pocketbook or hit them with the money. Like, everybody cares about something, and it's kind of partially about kind of taking the time to figure out what those people care about so that you can actually be persuasive and speak the language that's going to make them move. And then, you know, I like what you said also, you know, we have these battle scars, and it's usually only just this one person. We all have this sort of negativity bias where, you know, 1,000 people can like a picture, and then one person says something quasi-negative, and you go to sleep. Okay, fine, me. I go to sleep thinking about that negative thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, all those things kind of end up creating this environment sometimes where it's, some people don't think it's worth the effort, or they just get jaded and callous, and they say, I can't, you know, I can't persuade anybody anyway, so this is just the rule. Taking those extra steps, to your point, I think probably lead to a ton more efficacy and end up saving a ton of time on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, it's hard to do, right? But if you're always going to have a negative Nancy somewhere, right? You're going to have one, I don't want to do this. I've never had to do this before.
Right.
That old line. Doing this for 20 years. Heard of it, you know, you're always going to have that person. But you just, you know, if you've got 3,000 people who are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you've got that one person, just, you know, let them have their opinion and let it roll off. I mean, there's always going to be someone who doesn't like what you're doing, but if the business is happy, and you're making strides and you're putting the things in place that need to be in place.
Yeah, it kind of gets back to that risk-based approach you kind of take with everything. Like, you can't make everyone happy. There's going to be issues that people have with it. You can anticipate those things without taking it personally. Like, it's all kind of one thing we're talking about. So
right.
I love this picture of your board really caring about all this E&C stuff. Back in my manufacturing days, we would invest in a bunch of different companies, and I could always put them on a spectrum. And I think there's a corollary between like knowledge work, E&C. Like E&C is to knowledge work what safety is to manufacturing or something. And the companies that we would invest in, the board meetings where we started every meeting talking about safety, and there was, it wasn't time for all the board members to check their phone. They were actually dialed in and listening to this stuff. There was just a different environment around safety stuff, and we ended up having more profitability, and just like all these positive externalities were present in the business. And there's tons of case studies of, I think Alcoa maybe is a company where the guy came in and the company was failing, and he said, all right, well, we're just going to focus on safety. I may get this partially wrong, but it's generally correct. We're going to focus on safety, and he got a lot of pushback, and he's like, we're going to have no lost time incidents. It's a massive organization. Well, within 12 months, the whole company turned around. They were back to profitability and so forth, and he would attribute that to sort of the united front that the company had with respect to this thing that everybody sort of should care about. And again, I've seen that same thing in my life. Translating that over to your side, just this picture of the board is that same corollary to what I'm talking about. And while I was kind of kidding before earlier, like no one will say like they don't care about their people. Nobody in the manufacturing game would say, oh, I don't care about safety. Of course you care about safety. It's foolish to not, and yet people don't all start their meetings talking about safety. Boards can they can read the reports about how more ethical organizations outperform their peers and all those other things, and yet they still haven't hit that tipping point where the majority of organizations are run like yours, where again, I'm sure the grass looks really green from where I'm standing. I'm sure there's challenges that you go through and everything else, but like it seems like all right, perfect. I knew it. I knew that was perfectly green grass. But it seems like it's an actualized function. It seems like it has that board support. It seems like it's that panacea that a lot of people are looking to create in their own organization. So somebody who doesn't have that, like my point is, there's a business case for all this stuff that we're talking about. But there's a lot of people like you, smart people who care in organizations where they want to make a difference, where they want to actualize their functions, and they're really fighting against a light bulb that hasn't turned on at the top, whether that's at the CEO level, executive level, board, whatever. What kind of tactics would you like prescribe to somebody who's in that type of a situation to, again, I'm not saying they're going to turn that battleship on a dime, but to start getting those things to flicker on?
Right. I mean, so culture change, right? You're talking about culture changes.
I guess
and that's probably the hardest thing to accomplish. You can't go in and just say, this is
do this,
and then you turn the battleship on a dime.
Yeah.
So it's a building.
Yeah.
Guys. And I think a couple things. The business case is very important. Ethisphere puts out some good data around financial performance of their world's most ethical selectees versus the large cap index, I believe, of the S&P 500.
Yep.
And it's consistently these firms outperform their unlisted counterparts. So there's that. There's the kind of risk analysis of I like to do a cost avoidance slide for my yearly wrap up. Like, these are the penalties that we negotiated away, or these are the things that could have gone wrong that didn't, or what we saved you money on customs, we saved you money on this, on that. We like to do that to sort of quantify our existence, right?
Smart.
And then I really think, though, it all comes down to whether I have that data or not. If I go in with a bludgeon, and I try to tear everything down, and I come in like, I've been doing this all wrong this whole time.
Fools.
What's wrong with you? That's not, you got to build this. You have to invest the time with the executive team, with the board, with your colleagues, with your counterparts that are in charge of other functions, finance, procurement, contracts. You got to build those relationships, or what's the point? I mean, they're not going to listen. So it all comes back to that, unfortunately, I think. It's a lot of it's approach.
It's
In my experience. Now, I am sure that other people with other approaches are just as, effective. But
except the bludgeon approach. We can at least agree on that.
the bludgeon approach doesn't seem to work. Yeah. They're just like.
So I love that. I love that cost avoidance thing. It's so silly. Someone can watch a hockey game, and they can say, yeah, my team did lose in the last period, and that that shot did get past the goalie, but the guy blocked 40 shots. I mean, he did a good job there, right? Like, we can take that kind of a complex, kind of that proportionality to that simple game. But then with something that's way more complex in our organizations, the E&C department, we don't take any of that. Like, there's just like this goalie effect all the time. There are a lot of people are plagued by this goalie effect, and you kind of referenced it earlier, where they're scared to move, and they're scared to, man, if something goes wrong on my watch, if anything goes past us here, then, I'm a failure. Well, then, that just leads you kind of down a path where, well, then the safest thing to do is not even play any games. Having a view that says, hey, and helping, to your point, that influence piece again, helping them to see that says, hey, this is obviously not a cost center. We're obviously helping to, negotiate away different fines, or, these are things that could have happened if we didn't make these investments, helps to reinforce the position that you're already like lucky enough to have folks in, so that they can continue to stay there, and you can preserve this, this ethical culture that you guys have, all built together.
Right. And I think also, I've seen and heard from colleagues, not experienced it myself, but I've seen and heard from other ethics and compliance professionals, that there are some businesses that say if something goes wrong and the business, violates a policy or gets around to control, compliance is the hot seat, right? Like, they're going to hold compliance responsible. I think the better approach, and the one that we take, is compliance is here to help you. These are your policies and procedures. You do the training, you help them through it, you walk with them during the process. But if someone's going to go outside the process, you got to hold that business person accountable, right? I mean, I think a lot of where you see a lot of that fear are in places where accountability is placed in the wrong spot.
Great point.
Yeah.
Really great
so
point.
People are afraid of their own shadows. That doesn't work either.
Yeah, because it's not E&C's thing to avoid risk. It's everyone's role to avoid risk.
Everyone's responsibility, right? Exactly. It's yeah, it's everyone's job to me. It's not just my job to like call balls and strikes. Like, you got to give people the tools to exercise the judgment. You can't be there. You can't be in the room for everything. So.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find out more about you?
About me?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you can find out more about Parsons at parsons.com. You can go to our ethics and compliance page there and find out more about our program. About me, I don't know.
MySpace page or anything you want to plug?
MySpace? No, I tend to stay, I have Instagram. You can find lots of pictures of my dog.
Cool. People love dog pics. All right. You're going to get another couple of followers. I guarantee it.
Get ready. Pictures of my dog doing all the things. Especially during the pandemic, I'm like, here's my dog in the backyard. My dog on a walk. Here's my dog on the chair. Like,
here's him with a little scarf on.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Until next time.
All right.